Hi, everybody. Welcome to our last installment of the Who I Am. It's our abbreviation. If anybody hadn't figured that out yet, that's the abbreviation for interactive media in the schedule book. So that's why we're calling the speaker series that. This is our last installment for the spring 2022 semester, and I am thrilled that Vannesia Darby is here with us today, taking some time off. She told me this was her day off, so we should all be very appreciative that she is here today. Hi, Vannesia. How are you?
Good. How are you? Thanks for having me. Hello, everybody.
Great. Let me read a little bit of background. I know everybody that that is watching this or here has seen this bio. We've had your information out there for a while now, but just to kind of recap, Vannesia is a digital marketing consultant who has launched successful online campaigns for brands and companies, including, you have quite the portfolio here: Sony Music Entertainment, Emmy Award winner Rome Flynn, multi-million-dollar marketing company ConvertKit, and the YMCA. Like, no small change here.
It sounds fancy because I started in the music industry. That's it.
And we'll get to that. We'll talk about that. Your writing and research has been published in teen Vogue and academic literature. You're active in the community, and you left out the important part of your bio here, that you were one of the very first speakers for Craft Content Nashville, and a continuing speaker for that. We might bring that back. I don't know. We'll have that conversation maybe in 2023.
Fair enough.
Because we can't do that this year. But you're also a member of the Urban League Young Professionals in Middle Tennessee, Delta Sigma Theta sorority, the Gospel Music Association, the American Marketing Association, and the Bradley University Black Alumni Alliance. You were the recipient of the 2020 Millennial on the Move Award, which is pretty cool. And you're a co-host of the Entourage Podcast, and you're a former professor at TSU at Tennessee State University. But most importantly, you got your master's right here at MTSU.
True blue.
In organizational leadership. That was just a few years ago, right?
It seems like it was 2017.
2017. So, okay.
Yeah. Was that 5 years ago?
I guess math is hard.
Yeah, it's on a Friday. It's hard.
Yeah. So 5 years ago. So you are a fellow True Blue, even though I know you share the loyalties with Bradley too. But that's cool. So thanks for joining us. And I want to start with a fun point of conversation that you reminded me of as we were getting preparation for having this conversation, that I'd forgotten about you. That you landed your first internship at a major record label and your first job via Twitter.
Yeah.
Facebook.
You gotta have the timeline on.
So do you want to tell us a little bit about how did you do that?
Yeah. So I remember being in the library at Bradley, and I just really wanted to be in the music industry. So I started following all these publications, magazines, blogs, artists, and somebody retweeted a magazine, and they featured this woman named Tracy Artist, and how her whole clientele, they have gotten like 36 Stellar Award nominations that year. And Stellar's in the gospel communities, it's like the gospel Grammys. It used to actually be in Nashville. They went to Vegas, they may be back to Nashville, but not my circus, not my monkey. And so I was like, who is this woman? And at the time, I had just come off of an internship at EMI Gospel, which I'd also gotten on Twitter. I saw that they were coming to Nashville, and again, just kind of put myself out there to go to an event and meet the president, because I saw he was going to be speaking. Ran up to him. I said, "Hey, my name is Vannesia Darby. I just applied for an internship at EMI Gospel. Here's my card. I had a business card in college. Here's my card. Here's my card." And he said, "Great. Here's mine. When you get back to Illinois, send me an email and I'll have the HR manager pull your resume." And I did that, and I did an internship. Shout out to Ken Pennell, who was the founder of EMI Gospel, and then former president of the gospel division of Capital Christian Music Group. And so he ended up giving me kind of my first shot. And after that, when I was DMing the CEO, Tracy Artist, years later, I just said, "Hey, I keep getting turned down by every record label." At the time, EMI Gospel was going through a merger with Universal Music Group and becoming Motown Gospel, so they couldn't hire anybody. And I said, "Can I just offer you can I approach you for advice? Would you mind giving me advice? I keep seeing, people networking and everything. I'm in Illinois. Like, I wasn't in Nashville. I wasn't in New York. I wasn't in LA." Right. And she said, "Sure, sweetheart." And that was her reply back to the DM. And she sent me her email address. And I emailed her and I attached my resume thinking it was the lamest thing ever. I said, do not, I don't want to attach my resume. But she saw that I had interned at EMI Gospel and she had known the vice president / GM there, Larry Blackwell Jr., for 20 years. And they kind of came up in the industry together because no one ever leaves. And so she did an unofficial reference check and called him and said, what do you know about this Vannesia girl? And he said, oh, she's dope. Go ahead and hire her. And she turned around and offered me an opportunity to interview. Didn't know she was hiring. I knew none of this. It wasn't posted or anything like that. And so she ended up offering me a job and I accepted sight unseen. I started working from home. And then literally the first time I went to her office was the day I was looking for apartments. And that next weekend I was working like in the office.
Wow.
Crazy.
Yeah.
And then when I went there, she had all these like gold and platinum records on her wall. And I literally, there was not a lot of social media on her at the time. And so because a lot of executives back in the day, they were all about the talent. This is the talent. Yeah. And so they stayed behind the scenes. So there wasn't a lot, but on the heavy hitters. And now we have Clubhouse and Instagram and everything, but that wasn't really happening. And so, so I went there and I worked there for a year. And then after the merger was done, same Larry Blackwell Jr. called me and said, hey, do you want to come work for me? We have an opening in our digital, I think he called it our new media department at the time. And I said, sure. And I packed up again and came to Nashville.
Wow.
Yeah.
All because of social media.
All because of social media. Make sure your timeline looks good. But all because of social media. And also just really wanting to be a part of an industry that I felt like had served me so well. I'm a musician. I've been playing piano since I was in elementary school, classical, jazz, and gospel. And so I didn't really know what I wanted to do. But I had also been bit by the leadership development bug and when I was at Bradley. So I knew I was kind of honing skills like public speaking and writing and leadership development, and also still having this music thing going on. And so I figured, what's the best way to combine all of that in my faith? Go work at a gospel label. And I ended up working in marketing, and which is something that I never thought I would do because I hated marketing. And but yeah, I just made sure to follow those key tastemakers and gatekeepers. And anytime they ever did say something, make sure that I'm aware.
Yeah. And that's for students, that's a good tactic to take, if there's an industry that you really want to get into, follow the key movers and shakers, who, like you said, who's the gatekeeper, and follow them and just interact with them even casually on.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I had started to, because I wanted to get into production at one point, like audio production. And so I used to go and actually read the credits on the back of CDs. Like when my parents were shopping, I would go to the CD department in Target or Walmart, and I would flip over the CD and I would see who produced it, who's the executive producer, what label was it coming from. So when I did get those opportunities, like working at EMI as an intern or coming back to work at Motown Gospel, I walked in the room and I knew who they were, what they sounded like. At the time, the VP of Motown Gospel was Aaron Lindsay, who is a multiple Grammy Award-winning producer. And I knew exactly what tracks he played on and what his styling is as a musician. And so that was very helpful, and even my time with Tracy at I Hear Music, I worked with so many different artists because she was an independent marketing and promotions company. So I got to work with a lot of different labels, a lot of different executives. So literally day one, walking into the conference room at Motown, there was an artist and a manager there. And they said, Vannesia, what are you doing here? You work in Cincinnati. And like, so they were shocked. And so the team was like, oh, how do you know these people? I said, well, I worked with them and they were at the conference. And, so I already kind of had that home court advantage.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Can you tell a little bit what it was like working for a label?
Yeah.
I'm sure it was ridiculously crazy. I've never, I've done a lot of things. I've never worked for a music label. So I'm kind of curious too.
You should. It's kind of like an agency, Okay. So we were a small team. We had about 5 people in-house, but then we had a lot of outsourced companies that we worked with, and everything from advertising to publicity. And so there's different sections of the label, but digital marketing, I touched them all. So when, a demo came in or when a rough came in, the A&R department was all over it, but I still needed to listen to into it to think, how are we going to roll this out? What marketing is going to, how's it going to look like online when we market this? And so I literally did a little bit of everything. And if I can offer any advice for you all, is if you go to your first job, try everything. Don't be afraid to try it. Because I was able to sit in distribution meetings, I ended up being the person to pitch to Amazon and Google Play later on down the road. Because I was able to overcome my fear of Photoshop. Because I was an Excel girl, I was a PC girl, right?
Fear of Photoshop is a real thing. I get it.
Yes. I was able to help out one of my friends in distribution, and she ended up teeing me up for another opportunity. Because I also worked in radio, I could read the charts and I knew what it meant when a song went into recurrent status, or what it meant when you're top 10 or top 50. I knew what those types of things meant. So when I came into my assigned role of being in digital marketing, I was able to bring all of these experiences together. And so also there's a lot of music at the label, obviously, but it's not all of the artists. Like, we listen to a lot of different things. There's some days I was playing Benny and the Jets. Some days my boss was playing Fetty Wap. Some days, I mean, it's everything. And we were right by the legal department. So sorry for legal, because we definitely were playing a lot of music, and a lot of good equipment too. So there would be artist showcases. So artists would come in and do presentations for the staff. We had some like roundtable discussions. I also ran the internship program for Motown Gospel. So I had a lot of, and I ran the quarterly meetings, which they probably shouldn't have let me do. But there was so much experience, because you're touching marketing, but you're also touching travel, you're touching digital, you're touching A&R, and all these different things that go into putting out a solid piece of music, so that when you go open Apple Music, something is there for you. When you go click on the video on YouTube, there's lyrics. When you go click that short link, people are tracking it so that they can also feed you advertisements that go along with the song selection. So it's not just your favorite song. We are intentionally targeting you in a great way to get you what you want. And learning how that process actually unraveled was really my time at the label.
Wow. We could go down a really deep rabbit hole out regarding tracking. Like
yes. Oh yeah, we track everything. Like I know what you ate for breakfast. I know what you're getting at Kroger. We track everything. But the trick is, I always tell people, use your powers for good, so the trick is just not to hold on to data and hoard it. How do you make it so that the experience on the internet is something that is curated for that particular person, and something that they want, not just something that you put in front of their faces, but something that they actually want to see, which thus, helps with your conversions and clicks and all that other stuff. But it starts by knowing your people.
Yes. It doesn't matter what aspect of interactive media you get into. It all starts with knowing your audience.
Yeah. And in the industry, know your audience and have a good song. Have a good song.
That doesn't hurt.
Yeah.
So that was kind of your first step into the industry. And now you're out on your own. Have your own agency, MOXIE Nashville, which has the best swag. Thanks. But so what caused you to say, I'm going to do this on my own now?
Yeah. So now we get into the practical, we leave the warm and fuzzies. When I was an intern manager, I was a digital marketer at Motown. And I just felt this bug, like there was more for me to do, but I had already signed a year-long lease. So I knew I was going to stay put for a year at least. And there weren't really a lot of jobs that were hiring me. And I really wanted to pivot into higher education. And at the time I was getting my master's degree. And so financially for me, I wouldn't have been able to make the money that I wanted to make in my future if I still was at Motown making the same amount. And so it really wasn't personal. I just sat down and said, okay, if you want to be at a certain bracket, and I was already doing stuff on the side at that point, very small stuff, like writing some press releases, writing some media alerts for people. I was also blogging. So I'd already gotten some of those features, the Teen Vogue features and stuff like that. I said, okay, if I want to be somewhere else, I have to start realistically thinking of the moves I'm going to make. So at that time, I was 3 years into my career, full-time, even with the internship experience, about 4 or 5 years in. And I said, okay, if I'm going to pivot, now's the time. So it was just the timing and just making a rational decision because I didn't see any upward mobility.
Okay.
Yep.
Which happens to a lot of people.
Yeah. And here's the thing. I was very intentional. So I noticed, and you have to take notice of what's happening when you work places. You can't just be in your own little silo. So they were doing some layoffs. So when you start to see that, you start to look around like, if I were to get laid off today, which I don't think I was in jeopardy because our department was so small. If I were to get laid off today, where would I go? Yeah. Right. And I always tell people at will employment works both ways. Just like you can fire your employer, they can fire you too. Right. And everyone means well, but the money is the money, and you can't get personal with that. And so I was in my master's program at MTSU, and I took a negotiation class. And one of the projects we had to do was to negotiate something in our lives. So I chose to negotiate a position at my job. And so I was using what I was learning in class and applying it to my real life. And so I literally did an analysis of comparable roles, different markets, different labels, and I put together, and I went to Kinko's and had it printed out on color paper, on a waxy paper. And I put together a booklet of a position they need to create for me, the role they needed to create for me, why this role was beneficial, how this was going to mitigate risk in the future, how this was going to add to their bottom line, all the things that I've already done. And I gave it to the president, the vice president, the marketing director, and I let it sit. And so when it came time for my review, they didn't really say anything. And so I brought it up. I said, hey, I gave you a document a couple months ago. And they were very impressed with my approach because it was logical. It wasn't emotional. It was logical. And they said, I remember my VP saying, this is probably one of the most impressive approaches to salary negotiation I've ever seen, because I was a business major in college, just in the creative industry. Mm-hmm. So I took some of the things I was learning in the classroom and just applied it to a creative field. And so I remember having the conversation, and he said, we're going to keep going on this good train. And I said, well, this is the stop I got to get off at. And I just told him, I said, hey, for my financial future, I don't see it here. And this was in my review, my annual review. You don't have to do this on a random Tuesday. You can set aside time to talk about it. During my review, he said, I think if you like family. And I said, I know. And he said, if you were my daughter, I'd tell you to go because I have nothing to offer you.
Wow.
Mm-hmm. And I will forever appreciate him for telling me that, because he didn't have to. That's one of those off the record things. And he just kind of asked me, what are my plans? Was I going to go to a competitor? And I said, no. When do I plan to leave? I said, I don't know. So I ended up leaving a month later. And when I left them with a transition guide. They're still on my Christmas card list. I talk to everybody to this day. And when you leave, leave so that you may come back. In the music industry and entertainment industry, people bop around different labels all the time. It's nothing strange. Even now I'm working with Sony, which is technically a competitor to Universal Music Group. Right. But the person that recommended me was from Universal. So mm-hmm. people, change all the time. So always leave. Right. And so if you ever do have to come back or to return, that you have the buy-in from the executive leadership team.
Yeah. It's great advice. Can you tell us a little bit about what you do at MOXIE? Yeah. Kind of the industries you're working in, and is it all entertainment? I know you've got some other clients outside of the entertainment industry.
Yeah. So we specialize in business strategy and social media, and that's really where my wheelhouse has always been. It's kind of like my brainchild. So we do social media management. We also do what I like to call clarity calls. So if you come and your brand is kind of in shambles, we'll sit down and go through it step by step for you. We also have a self-paced resource called the MOXIE Schoolhouse, which is where you can learn from our signature program, get your business together, and also get downloadable templates. If you need to quit your job, there's an I Quit template pack. And then in case you need to do that. And so it's really brand development, business strategy, and social media management. What I was finding was a lot of people would come with their thinking they need marketing, but their business programming was off or their business structure was off. So I'd have to get that together first before I could actually market. And so seeing that gap, I bridged the two together and was able to kind of have my own niche in the industry where it's not just we're managing your social media. We're not just creating content for you. We're actually going in and saying, hey, let's unearth some of these things that will work the best for you.
Yes, taking a more kind of overarching, kind of looking at the big picture kind of approach to it.
Because my goal is honestly that every client feels ready enough to leave. I never want to have to stay with a client forever, because I'm going to grow, they're going to grow. That's always the goal. So if you're staying and I'm staying and we're not growing, then we have to look at, what are we really working well together, you know? And even the longstanding clients that I've worked with SaaS companies, I work with influencers, I work with fitness influencers. Some of those, even the longstanding clients I have, we grow together. So sometimes people will hire us for a project. We've also dabbled into podcast production as well. So I helped produce a podcast called Text to Table, which is talking about the intersectionality of race and leadership. So like just different things, especially with the climate of what's happening in our country. We were tapped to do a lot of different projects and project management, which wasn't traditionally in our wheelhouse, in the sense of that it was a signature offering, but it's something that we definitely hopped on and did. So that's a little bit about what we do.
Cool. And maybe touch a little bit more on the, you mentioned some of the other industries that you work in. What your clients right now work in all kinds of different industries, right?
Yeah. So I said SaaS, which I should have said software as a service.
Yeah.
So that I thought about that. So that's one of my former clients, ConvertKit. I used to actually act as their associate producer for their webinars. So we would talk to tens of thousands of subscribers every week, which was a lot, a heavy production schedule. And so literally do everything from setting up their registration pages to setting up their replay pages, their confirmation pages, editing their copy. So that was really fun. And on the social media management side, we also create content too for some of like I'm trying to give realistic examples. So like for Sony, they have a legacy brand called Verity Gospel. And so we start pulling and curating old throwback clips of, Fred Hammond and Kurt Franklin and Yolanda Adams and all these people. So we make sure that voice is developed and that it is on social as well. For Text to Table, like I mentioned before, we're producing it. So we're literally coming up with the topics. We are communicating with all the guests. We're communicating with the hosts. We're making sure the software is right. I work with the audio engineer. She cuts everything up. So that's really fun too. So I'm just having fun. Honestly, I'm just having fun.
If they're willing to pay you, that's and
they're a good fit. I will say that if they have a check and they're a good fit, because every client or potential client isn't a great fit. And I had to learn that as well. So we actually created an ideal client profile last year and turned that into FAQs on our website, just so people can know, if they're a good fit. Sometimes very sparingly, we also partner with external web developers. And so if people need a website and the web developer, typically the ones that I work with, they want me to project manage them to get it done. So we do that. So we just finished one for First Look Readers last year, which is a book publishing website. So we just did that. So we do a little bit different stuff.
Very cool. All over the place. I like that.
Thanks.
Let's stay with like the continuing, we were chatting before we started this today, and the idea of pivoting in your career how many times, right? Right. I mean, that's real life these days, is that you don't stay in one career for 30 years anymore.
Right. And it was funny that in my master's program, my thesis was about different generations in the workplace, and that's literally by the studies, whereas older generations, they're interested in loyalty and they're interested in retiring. Younger generations, they are interested in meaning and purpose. And so if a job does not align with their meaning and purpose, they're okay to pivot into a different career. And I think I was sharing with you earlier, I have focused on evolving as a person, evolving as a leader, and not just getting better at my job. And what I mean by that is, yes, I make sure that I'm kept abreast on new things, but I'm also not out on TikTok doing dances, right? So as I continue to evolve, I'm able to make space for other people who are coming in with new, innovative, and creative ideas to approach digital marketing. When I grew up, it was Zanga, GeoCities, MySpace, Ustream when we were in college. That's how you were live streaming, was Ustream. Yep. And I remember my friend Louise setting up her laptop to Ustream a panel discussion and tweeting out the link. And I thought it was so cool. Where now you can go live on your phone. I mean, there used to, when I first got a cell phone, there was no internet on there. There wasn't even color screen. So,
Yep.
to now see that you can literally have an agency right here is crazy to me. And so I would encourage anybody to, if you want to start something, if you want to do it, you have all the tools to do it now. And anybody that comes up to me after I do presentations, they typically say, oh, well, I want to do A, B, and C, 1, 2, and 3. My question to them is always, well, how are you doing that right now? So if you want to write, do you have a blog? Are you guest blogging? Are you pitching? If you want to be in publicity, are you reaching out to people right now? If you are on campus and you're in the interactive media program, are you doing something on a website to highlight what's happening on campus? Are you interviewing students? Are you honing those skills? So I always say, don't wait, don't wait, especially if you're in college. My only regret is that I did not start MOXIE from my student apartment. That's my only regret. Because I could have been had this. This is not new. I had relationships on campus. I had relationships after I graduated. I had relationships in the industry. And so the only thing I needed to do was to have my mindset shift and say, okay, I can start this right now. And so having the idea that I'm going to continually evolve for the rest of my life helps me to know when there's something that is ending for me and when I need to pivot and go into a different direction.
Yeah. There's somebody gave me advice one time that don't let perfection stand in the way of progress.
Yeah.
Right. So we get that a lot. Like I'm the same way. I'll wait until I have all the gear that I need to be able to do something, or, I'll wait to launch a website or post a blog post until I'm sure it's 100% perfect and there aren't any mistakes in it. And it's like, no, sometimes you just have to hit publish. Sometimes you just have to plug a microphone into a computer and start a podcast,
and be bad for a while.
Yeah.
like sometimes you have to, and we're not saying, just throw anything out there. That's not what we're saying, but it's the fear, not necessarily the skill that you have to get over. And sometimes in your early, like my first flyers were horrible. I was the glitter queen, the drop shadow queen. I mean, it was bad.
Beveled edges.
Yes. Oh, absolutely. And so, but I thought it was good because I was trying. And I think a lot of times we think just because we attempt at it that we're good at it. And that's not the case. You literally have to develop your eye. I can look at things now and move things around. And my assistant is so funny because she's like, how did you do that? I said, it's in me now. But before, my marketing director was showing me this, your eye makes a Z formation and you want to make sure you got, these points and there's all the information in there. Or I had one of my sorority sisters tell me, you write too long, you need to shorten, you need to start using bulleted lists and stuff like that. So you got to take those criticisms and know that it's sharpening you and that you're honing your skills. And not be afraid to try and just be bad for a little bit. You won't be bad forever. If you make up in your mind you won't be bad forever, then you won't be. But it's not all it's cracked up to be. Even moving to Cincinnati or getting a job off Twitter, it sounds great, it sounds fabulous, but I question myself every single day because I'm like, how come no one else is hiring me and I have to get a job off Twitter, right? The narrative can go either way.
Yeah.
And so once you say, no, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to continue to develop and I'm going to take this opportunity as a chance for me to get better at my craft. Then you open up the door for you to continue to evolve into the person that you already are, but you just need the opportunity to meet that timing.
Yeah, that's great. Gosh, we could keep talking about that for like another 2 hours, I think.
Because it's hard.
Yeah.
And I think on social media, and I love social media because it's a way for you to share your message, but it's dangerous for people to think that it happens that quickly.
Yeah.
Like it doesn't happen that quickly. And even if there's so many people that you're seeing now that lost everything and won't tell you that part of their story. Right? Yeah. And they'll curate it to look like it was just continual progression. But there's so many setbacks along the way, whether it's working at a label, being an entrepreneur, going back to school, getting your undergraduate degree. There's so many setbacks that we either forget about, we overlook, or we don't want to revisit and we don't want to share. But I want to encourage everyone that's watching this to share your story on social as much as you can. And you don't have to tell all your business, right? But share your story so that people can understand that they're not alone and also empathize with you. And that's where getting real followers happens. It's that communal aspect that we often look over just because we're hitting post.
Yeah. Well, that's what you're doing right now on your Instagram a little bit is, I mean, you're not posting, I mean, yes, you post about Moxie, but you're not like, it's not Moxie 24/7. You're doing some really fun stuff on Insta in particular. Is where I notice all of your stuff is there. Cause that's all I do is scroll Instagram. That's all. Welcome.
That's all you have to do in life is scroll Instagram.
That's in my spare time. Right. Yeah.
Right.
But yeah, so you've taken a kind of a different approach, just even, it seems like even fairly recently within the last several months that you've kind of started posting these videos.
Yeah, I think I just recommitted, and and it's funny because if I read through my old blogs, and I watch my old videos, it's still there, but I just wasn't 100% committed. And so now I said, well, if this keeps coming up, this mentor-ish, spreading knowledge-ish, it keeps coming up. Why not double down on that? Because that's where I am in my life right now. Like I said, we're not Ustreaming anymore. So there's a certain level of knowledge that I have just because I am in, the older millennial generation where I know what it's like to write a check. I know what it's like to look up numbers in a phone book, but I also know what it's like to Google. I know what it's like to use YouTube as a search engine when you're in the store trying to figure out which product to buy. Right. Yeah. And so I've decided that for me, social media are the distribution channels. Right. And so because people know me online and in real life. And so no one is I'm not waiting for any network to give me an opportunity when there's YouTube. Right. And so I'm not waiting for, an outlet to feature my blog post when I have WordPress. And so again, going back to the fail early, right? So if I can hone my skills now, when the opportunity comes, just like they've all come before, like I've been blogging, that's nothing new, but I had to get better at writing before I got better at blogging, before I got featured. And so for me, sharing those lessons, and I've gotten so many people that have told me offline, not even in the comments, not even like people have texted me or they've called me and said, I see you. And I'm like, am I seen? Can you see me? And so, but they appreciate it because they know what it's like to be along the journey. And also, this is really why it started too. People kept asking me the same questions. And so me as a marketer, you turn repeated questions into content. And so, because if I can send you a link to something, I don't have to repeat myself. So when it came to jobs and quitting jobs and starting your own business, people kept asking me how to do it. So then I created the course and then I created the templates. And then, I would send, and I would have to go back to my email because I would literally send people the same email. And I'm like, turn this into a piece of content. So it's your job to know when there's an opportunity there. Especially if you are in interactive media, because they're always around. You just have to know when to pull the switch or flip the switch.
Yeah, for sure. You've already like given us a whole bunch of advice on any other words of wisdom for students who are, hopefully trying to get into some sort of interactive media career?
Yes, I would say what someone told me. Be integral, because there's a lot of people that come into the industry or they come into any field and they want to take before they give. And so you have to be honest and you have to do what you say you're going to do. Another piece of advice I've gotten is don't take it personal. Sometimes your work isn't that great, or sometimes it's great, but it's not a good fit for the client or the customer. And so you can't walk around with a chip on your shoulder just because someone gave you a form of critique. And the last piece I would give is to make sure that you build genuine relationships. At this point in my career, I haven't had to ask for a client. I'm just now getting into pitching with brands that I want to work with, right? That I'm a fan of, but they all came from relationships. The Tracy Artist, my boss in the industry where I first told you about, she actually became my client when I started MOXIE. Right. And the same thing that you heard her talk to Larry when I told that story. So build those genuine relationships. You don't always have to ask for a favor. It doesn't always have to be a tit for tat. But when you do that, people will think of you when opportunities come and they'll speak your names in rooms that you're not in, as long as you have that genuine relationship. So be integral and intentional as well. Don't take it personal and build genuine relationships.
Yeah. Great advice. And have a business card.
and have a business card. Stay ready so you want to get ready.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Like we're starting to get back to in-person networking events now. You know, it's been kind of a weird 2 years, but like you're starting to see that come back. And it, even if it's just your name and your email address, like that's still something to hand to somebody when you're at a networking event. It's important.
And I'll tell you this too. Professor O'Neill, I sit on the panel for the final semester pitch. He makes everyone have a business card. Yeah. One person that pitched, I ended up bringing her on and giving her some freelance work, and she worked with me for about 6 to 8 months. Yeah. So because I keep the cards, you know, and even if it's a card with a QR code on there that goes to your website, you'll be innovative, but make sure that you're prepared.
Yeah. Definitely. Well, we could totally chat for, you know, like I said, probably another 3 or 4 hours. Right, it's been a while since we've talked to each other. So
I know we may have to cut the camera off now, but we keep going. But just for y'all,
we'll stop the recording. We're going to keep chatting because we got lots to catch up on. But no, Vannesia, thank you so much for taking some time out of your day to talk to us. And where can people follow you? Because we just told everybody to make connections in the industry. So how can they connect with you?
I'm pretty much everywhere on the internet under Vannesia Darby. That's Vannesia, Vannesia Darby as in boy, Y. You go to VannesiaDarby.com. All my socials are there. Instagram is my jam. Twitter is my sweet spot too. And LinkedIn, I'm also on there.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much again. And hopefully we'll be bringing the speaker series back in the spring or in the fall. Yeah, this is spring. I don't know what day it is.
Well, put me on the lineup for fall.
Yeah. Yeah. We'll definitely try to get you back on the schedule again in the not so distant future. So thank you so much.
Bye.